Welcome everyone to the Department of Justice Bureau of Justice Assistance webinar on CTAS Purpose Areas 2, 3, 4, and 10. My name is Christina and I will be your moderator for today. It is my pleasure to turn things over to our subject matter experts from the Bureau of Justice Assistance. Your presenters today will be Julius Dupree and Trish Thaxton.
Thank you, Christina. This is Julius Dupree. I'm with the Bureau of Justice Assistance and I'm a policy advisor. My colleague who's going to be presenting to you shortly, Trish Thaxton, is a policy advisor as well. My area of expertise is really around tribal corrections, so that includes tribal justice system infrastructure program, tribal probation, as well as tribal reentry. My colleague, Trish Thaxton, her focus is purpose areas 2, 3, and 10. And her area of expertise is around Indian alcohol and substance abuse, tribal courts, as well as the violent crime purpose area, which she'll be talking about shortly. The Bureau of Justice Assistance, we are actually very comprehensive as far as the resources that we provide. Our overall mission is really to provide leadership and services around grants administration, as well as policy and development for local, state, and tribal justice strategies to achieve safer communities. So really what that translates to is we provide grants for jurisdictions to be able to implement programs, really focused on addressing crime issues, as well as training and technical assistance services, which that can come in the form of webinars, that can come in the form of on-site assistance, as well as in-person training opportunities, and also publications and tools that really help practitioners implement programs and strategies to basically address crime issues in their communities and hopefully reduce recidivism rates for those folks that are incarcerated or returning to communities. Our programs and initiatives actually really cover the continuum of the criminal justice system. Our resources are really in the areas of law enforcement, justice information sharing, countering terrorism, managing offenders, combating drug crime and abuse, adjudications, advancing tribal justice, crime prevention, protecting vulnerable populations, and capacity building. Again, just to reiterate, the purpose areas that we're going to be discussing today, we're going to be discussing actually 4 purpose areas. Purpose area 2 is really the comprehensive tribal justice system strategic planning. Purpose area 3 is tribal justice systems. This includes the Indian alcohol and substance abuse funding, as well as tribal courts funding resources. And then there's purpose area 4, which is a tribal justice system infrastructure program, which many of you may know really involves the renovation, expansion, or replacement of justice facilities. And also purpose area 10, addressing violent crime in tribal communities, is a new purpose area. And Trish Thaxton will talk a little bit more about how that purpose area can be used to address crime in your communities as well. Trish, do you want to go ahead and talk about purpose area 2?
Sure. Thank you, Julius. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. The Comprehensive Tribal Justice System Strategic Planning Purpose Area, which is Purpose Area 2, is a jointly funded and managed effort of all 5 of the offices that participate in CTAS. So that's BJA, the Office on Violence Against Women, the Community-Oriented Policing Services Office, the Office on Victims of Crime, and the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. And all 5 offices do participate together in this. The purpose of this purpose area is to engage in comprehensive justice system-wide strategic planning to improve the overall functioning of the tribal justice system, community wellness, and public safety. And that really is looking at the big picture of how the entire justice system is functioning as a whole. If you're looking to do strategic planning around a specific need in your justice system, whether that's in law enforcement or the courts or any particular area, rather than the overall functioning of the system, then you would want to look at applying under one of our other purpose areas for strategic planning on specific issues. This really is looking at the big picture and does need to include all of the different aspects of your justice system in order to create a competitive application. Funding can be used for personnel to manage the project, either an employee or a contract employee, but someone who's going to be on site at the tribe working on the day-to-day management of the project. Also general office equipment to support that work, and travel to BJA-sponsored training events. The purpose area also includes extensive training and technical assistance that is provided by Department of Justice, so there's not a need to hire an outside planner for this purpose area, and it also is not an allowable expense to hire someone from outside the tribe to do the strategic planning for you with this funding. Once you've gone through this strategic planning process, and have created a written strategic plan, you submit that to the department, and we will provide you with feedback on that plan. Once the plan is approved, the tribe is eligible to come in one time for priority consideration on their CTAS application in a subsequent year. What that means is, after your plan is completed and has been approved, if you're putting in your next CTAS application, or you could choose to do it a year later if you need a little more time to really be prepared to utilize this opportunity, you can let us know that you intend to use your priority consideration, and all of those applications within that year that are directly connected to your strategic plan will be given additional consideration to kind of raise those up so that you have a greater chance of receiving funding to begin to implement the plan. The next purpose area I'm going to discuss is Purpose Area 3. As Julius mentioned, several years ago, we had two different funding streams, one for tribal court assistance and one for alcohol and substance abuse. Our funding streams changed several years ago and gave us much greater flexibility, and therefore we changed the purpose areas. Instead of having those two more directed funding streams, we changed it to this more broad tribal justice systems purpose area, which allows you to apply for funding for the full spectrum of the justice system, to include preventing alcohol and substance abuse related crimes and or enhancing your court system, but also prevention services, treatment programs, your tribal courts, healing to wellness courts, diversion programs, probation, alternative to incarceration, alternative dispute resolution methods. Really, anything that is directly connected to the tribal justice system can be funded through this purpose area as far as programming goes. This is not a purpose area for construction. The programs can focus on a wide range of needs. You can take a creative approach to addressing the needs within your community in a manner that is culturally relevant and appropriate for your tribe. Funding uses here include personnel to manage the project, equipment to enhance the tribal justice system, general office equipment to support the program, training and travel to BJA-sponsored events.
I guess I'll go ahead and take it from here, Trish. So CTAS Purpose Area 4 is the Tribal Justice Systems Infrastructure Program. And so it may, just to kind of give you a background around this particular program, this program was available for new construction projects, but we had to pull back from that because of resource availability. And so this program is really focused on either renovating, expanding, or replacing buildings in the form of prefabricated or permanent modular buildings to actually provide infrastructure capacity for tribes to be able to address their court needs, police departments, multi-purpose justice centers, transitional living facilities, or halfway houses. So what we really find with this program is that since the amounts available for our program really ranges depending on, if you're a single jurisdiction, generally the amounts that we award is up to $1 million. If you're a multi-jurisdictional or regional project, and when I say regional, that would mean 2 or more tribes, then the amount could be up to $4 million. But what we find is tribes are very creative in how they leverage other funding available to be able to supplement these projects. So that is one thing that we see with this program, and it tends to be effective for many of the tribes. I will say that we do not allow for new construction under this project. I mean, that is not allowed in this program for the reasons I mentioned earlier as far as resource availability is concerned. The funding uses really include infrastructure costs associated with, maybe the renovation. That may be site preparation, could be sewage, could be water, could be staff housing, could be furniture, fixtures, and equipment as well. We have funded projects in all of those areas. Just so you kind of know what we've seen as far as the latest trend as far as funding that we saw for this past year in FY18, we did see a number of court-related projects get funded, and so what we want to see when you submit an application is that there is a need for the renovation, expansion, the replacement. With some projects or some tribes, due to be able to substantiate that need, is they may provide us with needs assessment that may have been completed. We've also seen with a lot of the court projects that maybe Bureau of Indian Affairs did an assessment and determined that the facility is is not safe or needs some renovation work. And so, any type of documentation that you can provide that could substantiate the need for infrastructure funding will definitely help your application tremendously. As we consider applications for funding, we do receive more applications than we can fund, given our availability of funding. And so, I know maybe last year we might have received close to 30 applications, and we may have funded 8 or 9 out of that. So that's just to kind of give you an idea. Most projects we generally fund, like I said, are really around the $1 million mark. Now, if you do come in for a regional project and there is, a lot of support for that in the region, there's letters of support, a memorandum of understanding, there's other documentation that can support the need for a regional facility, then we may fund regional facilities around $4 million as well. So wanted to kind of just give you a little bit of context around this particular program. One thing that I will say is that for any project that you receive funding from us, you have to demonstrate a criminal justice nexus, whether the clients that are going to be participating in the program are either referred by the court or by law enforcement. They're reentering your community from prison. You would need to demonstrate that there is a criminal justice nexus for any facilities that's being renovated or expanded. Key requirements I just wanted to highlight under Purpose Area 4, you're going to want to certify or provide information as part of your application as to the extent of planning completed, any relevant documents that you may have had that demonstrate you've done planning. For instance, we have some jurisdictions that have done a master plan. Some jurisdictions have done some sort of needs assessment, or whatever documentation you can present to us to show that you've done planning will greatly enhance your applications being reviewed favorably for funding. Any applicants that are receiving funding for a renovation or expansion project will be required to indicate in the program narrative as whether the existing proposed building is a viable structure for renovation or expansion. We would want you all to address in your application, but ultimately we would have our training and technical assistance providers come out and do an on-site visit to be able to assess the structure viability for your facility. So that's something to keep in mind as well. There is a real property requirement around this program. We, the federal government, will have an invested interest in your project after you've built your facility, just because it's, whatever portion of funding that we provided, that our stake would be whatever is in proportion to what we funded for that particular project. And so we would regularly follow up with you just to make sure that you're using the facility as it was originally intended. But if you at some point during the life of the facility determine that you want to change the scope of that, then we would need to be notified as well. So that's just something that we'll give more guidance on, if you do receive funding. But those are some key requirements that I just wanted to highlight as part of this program. Trish, do you want to talk a little bit about Purpose Area 10?
Yes, thanks, Julius. Purpose Area 10, as many of you are probably aware, is new in CTAS in 2019. This purpose area is using funds that BJA has set aside to be in CTAS. They were not funds that were appropriated as tribal-specific funds, and there are some very specific requirements around the use of the funds. And so you will see that this purpose area is to support the critical and priority needs of tribal justice systems to address increasing and serious violent crime in order to ensure tribal safety through the development, implementation, and enhancement of strategies. I want to just emphasize here that the key piece of that is important to differentiate between things that you would apply under Purpose Area 10 for versus those that are better to be applied for under Purpose Area 3, which is a very, very flexible funding stream. That is our tribal appropriation. The precipitous increase or extraordinary increase in a particular type of crime or in crime overall within the community is a key factor. This funding has to be used in a situation where the increase of crime has been demonstrated clearly, and that has to be demonstrated in the application. And you can do that, it's not UCR data or any particular set of data that's required, but you do have to be able to demonstrate that there is a significant or extraordinary increase in crime or a particular type of crime. The funding can be used to track, identify, and quickly respond to these increases in crime issues using data and ongoing analysis that can include efforts to determine the nature and extent of the reported issues of missing and murdered Native Americans and Alaska Natives, to enhance efforts to prevent and respond to violent crime in tribal communities, including investigations, forensics, prosecution, information sharing, and supervision and reentry in coordination with key federal and state partners, to enhance the number and quality of violent crime investigations and prosecutions, including collaborative efforts such as the Tribal Prosecutor Special Assistant U.S. Attorney Program, or SAUSA program. This includes investments in tools for tribal prosecutors, courts, and corrections to effectively respond to crime and related tribal safety, and to implement and enhance the authorities and provisions under TLOA and the Violence Against Women Reorganization Act. It's important to note that if you're looking at issues of crime that are normally handled by the Office on Violence Against Women, you can still have some of those crimes in the work that you're doing, but if more than 50% of the caseload is expected to be violence against women related crimes, then you should be applying to the Office of Violence Against Women purpose area rather than Purpose Area 10. If more than 50% of the crimes that you're addressing are, perhaps murder, assault, issues that are not addressable through the OVW funding, if more than 50% of those are what you're expecting in your caseload, then Purpose Area 10 would be a good place to look to. The uses of these funds can include tribal investigations and prosecutions, tribal courts, equipment, strategic planning, and training needs. For BJA CTAS eligibility, only federally recognized Indian tribal governments, as determined by the Secretary of the Interior, may apply. And previous CTAS awardees for Purpose Areas 2, 3, and 4 may apply, but should demonstrate that the goals of the new request are complementary or supplemental of the current or existing projects funded under these purpose areas. It's also important to note that while you will not be prohibited from applying if you have an open award, if you have not been moving forward with an existing award and you have 75% of an award that's several years old and has not been moved forward on, even though you're allowed to apply, you're much less likely to be competitive under that circumstance. So really look at your existing awards. Be sure that you're moving forward effectively, both on the funds you're spending and the deliverables that you have defined before you go through the effort of putting in a new application. Purpose Area 10 applicants, we have a special eligibility requirement that is related again to the funding stream and the statutory requirements around that. You must submit a signed letter of support or an MOU from the U.S. Attorney's Office at the time of application. If you are in a PL-280 state and there is not an existing relationship with the U.S. Attorney's Office due to the nature of a PL-280 jurisdiction, then a similar MOU with the equivalent state agency within your state that would be handling that role with those serious violent crimes would be where you would need to have an MOU.
So just so you all know, there's a resource underutilized we want to highlight, a funding page. We have an online grant writing tool, if you will, that really helps you prepare an application for the CTAS solicitation. And it's our online grant writing tool. It can be accessed at our Tribal Justice Grants website. So you'll see the email address is listed below. That's www.justice.gov/tribal/grants. And this particular tool, it really kind of walks you through step by step on how to put together a CTAS application. It gives you guidance on developing a budget. It gives you guidance on developing a program narrative. It also talks about how to develop partnerships. Really a good guideline. So if you have some time, it's a free tool, open to the public. I would encourage you, if you haven't, if you're new to the grant writing process, or, even if you're not new to the grant writing process, you may find that there's some components of this particular tool that could help you strengthen, certain areas of your application. The contact information for purpose areas 2, 3, and 10, there's Tricia's information is provided right here. Purpose area 4, again, I'm Julius Dupree. My information is highlighted as well. I guess at this point, we want to go ahead and find out if there are any questions that we may be able to answer.
Great, thanks, Julius. On the CTAS solicitation, page 57, it's also page 61 if looking on the PDF form, under section G, application review and evaluation process. It states application should include all items listed in what an application should include on page 6 and noted on the application checklist beginning on page 79. I cannot find any document that has 79 pages. Can you guide me to the correct document? I didn't see an application checklist on the CTAS site. Is that on grants.gov?
We reduced the length of the application in order to try and make it easier to manage because it has been so large in the past, and it sounds like the page number changed and did not get changed in that line, so I apologize for that. While we're on the line here, I'm going to go look for it. The checklist is probably in the resource document that is associated with the CTAS solicitation, and you should definitely be looking at both of those documents side by side, since there is a lot of very important information in the resource document. But as we continue through here, I'm going to go ahead and see if I can pull it up so I can give you more specific information.
Great, thank you, Trish. For purpose area 4, in accordance with DOJ real property standards, BJA will continue to monitor facility usage and capacity levels once the grant ends. How long will the building be monitored? When the scope changes and programs are no longer funded under Department of Justice, what happens?
Yes, that's an excellent question, and we're really in a process of determining what the useful life of the facility would be, because when I say we're in the process of, we're working with our Office of General Counsel on that, because what we find is that, there may be some facilities that are newer than others, so we would have to look at it more on a case-by-case basis as far as what that useful life is, but at this point, we don't have that information. But please stand by for the guidance on that if you ultimately fund it under that program.
Great, thank you, Julius. In reference to purpose area number 10, is there an allowable or unallowable list of equipment in regards to responding to increased violent crimes?
We do not have a specific list at this time. I think that generally most things would be allowable. But if you have a specific item that you're concerned about, you can email me offline and I'll be happy to work with your specific situation and help you to figure out exactly what is and is not allowable. I can give it to you now. It's m.patricia.stockton@ojp.usdoj.gov. I'm also going to answer the question about the checklist. The checklist is the very last page of the solicitation. It looks like it begins on page 60 of the solicitation itself. And there's a great big red stop sign that says stop. That's the beginning of the checklist, and it goes through page 62.
All right, great. Well, we would like to thank everyone for joining us today, and we hope you can join us for future fiscal year 2019 CTAS webinars. Thank you for joining.